My parents are suing me for $682,000 for a house I never agreed to buy. The best part? They secretly forged my signature, put my name on the mortgage, then dragged me into court when I refused to be a good daughter and pay for it. I'm 32 years old. 6 months ago, I opened a letter from a bank and found out I apparently co-signed my sister's dream home. I'd never seen the house, never signed the papers, and on the day my signature was notarized, I wasn't even in the same state. My mom's explanation? We decided you should pay. What they didn't know was that I keep receipts. Literal receipts. Years of emails and proof that I'd been saying no to their financial blackmail, and that this time, I was ready to fight back. If you've ever been called selfish for having boundaries or been painted as the villain for refusing to be used, hit that like button. Subscribe if you love watching justice go from, "That's not fair," to, "Oh, that's beautiful." And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I genuinely love seeing how far these stories travel. Alright, let me show you how I went from ungrateful daughter to the woman who made my entire family face a judge. I grew up in the Brennan house, where there were 2 daughters, but everyone knew only one really counted. My sister, Melody, was the golden child. She was warm, bubbly, the kind of person who could charm a room in 30 seconds. She'd laugh at my dad's worst jokes, help my mom in the kitchen without being asked, and somehow every relative walked away saying, "God, she's such a sweetheart." Teachers adored her. Neighbors waved when she walked by. She was the daughter you brag about at church. Then there was me, Sienna. Quiet. Focused. The kid who sat in the corner with a book while everyone else socialized. I didn't collect compliments. I collected A's. Numbers made sense. Spreadsheets made sense. People, not so much. When I passed my CPA exam at 26, I called home beaming, ready for that little moment of, "We're proud of you." My dad's response? "So, when are you getting married like your sister?" That was the pattern. Melody got help. I got expectations. They paid her rent for 5 years. They paid her college. When I graduated with student loans, I paid every cent myself. No offers. No questions. Just, "You'll be fine. You're the strong one." Every holiday, my mom would bounce a grandchild on her knee and then turn to me with that pitying look. "You should learn from your sister," she'd say. "Melody knows how to make people love her." After a while, I stopped waiting for praise. I realized the rules were different for me. I just didn't realize how different until they needed something I had, a clean credit score and a solid income. The label came slowly, then all at once. Sienna is the selfish one. 3 years ago, Melody called asking for $15,000 for a new car. Her husband's job wasn't covering things like it used to. She promised to pay me back in 6 months. The problem? She already owed me $8,000 from the last time. Money that had simply evaporated, along with any thank you. So I said no. Not because I couldn't afford it, because I was done being her personal ATM. That night my mom called me sobbing. "How can you be so cold to your own sister?" 6 months later, Melody wanted me to co-sign her apartment lease. The landlord wanted a guarantor. Her credit was a mess. I explained, like a professional, like an adult, that co-signing meant I'd be legally responsible if she bailed. I said no again. My dad didn't yell. He just went quiet. 3 weeks, no calls, no texts. The cold shoulder as punishment. Then I missed my nephew's 5th birthday because I had a deadline on a major audit. If I missed it, I risked my job. I sent a gift, called to apologize. That night, Melody posted, "Family should always come first. Sad when some people forget that."
40 plus like.
A dozen comments agreeing. Aunt Patricia wrote, "Some people only care about themselves." That's when I started keeping records. Every ask, every refusal, every guilt trip. I created an email folder labeled Family Requests. Not out of spite, out of self-defense. When people tell you you're crazy long enough, you start needing proof you aren't. That folder ended up saving my life. The envelope that changed everything looked like junk mail. Standard bank letterhead. My name, my address. I almost tossed it. Second notice. Mortgage payment overdue. Property address, 4847, Willowbrook Lane, Lakewood, Colorado. I'd never heard of Willowbrook Lane. I don't live in Lakewood. My hands went cold. Outstanding balance, $682,000.
Co Signer, Shen Naem.
Brennan. I called the bank so fast my fingers shook. Yes, MS. Brennan. The rep said calmly. You're listed as co-signer. The account opened 14 months ago. Primary borrowers are Harold Brennan and Melody Brennan Cole. Harold and Melody. My father and my sister. There has to be a mistake, I said. I never signed anything. We have the application on file. The documents were notarized on September 15, 2023. Notarized, which meant someone watched me sign and stamped it as legit, for a house I'd never heard of. While I was still on the phone, I pulled up my credit report. There it was. A $682,000 mortgage attached to my name, quietly dragging my credit score down for over a year. The mailing address on file? My parents' house. The one I hadn't lived in for a decade. I hung up and just stared at that letter, heart pounding so loud it felt like it was echoing in the room. Then I called my mother. She answered on the third ring, cheerful. Sienna, what a nice surprise. We were just talking about you. Did you put my name on a mortgage? I asked. Silence. 3 seconds. 4. We were going to tell you, she said, voice suddenly careful. Tell me what, Mom? Rustling. My dad's voice in the background. Then he came on. This is family, Sienna. Melody needed the house. You have a good job. We decided you should help. We decided. You raised me, he continued. We paid for your upbringing. This is what family does. I paid for my own student loans, I snapped. You paid for Melody's entire education. And now you've forged my signature. My mom's voice came back, soft and wet around the edges, the about-to-cry tone I'd heard my whole life. If you loved us, you wouldn't make this so hard. You committed fraud, I said. You stole my identity. My dad snorted. Don't be dramatic. We just used your name on some paperwork. It's not a crime when it's family. It literally is, I said. Then he dropped the line that told me exactly how they saw me. You're 32. No husband, no kids. What do you even need that money for? I hung up. Some questions don't deserve an answer. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I did what I do best. I ran the numbers and looked at the rules. If this mortgage defaulted with my name on it, my credit would crater. Collections, foreclosure, years of damage. In my field, lots of firms run credit checks on employees who handle finances. A foreclosure could cost me my entire career. This wasn't just about money. It was about my future. At 2 a.m., I called Marcus, an old college friend who went into real estate law. If you didn't sign, he said slowly, this is identity fraud and forgery. Serious stuff. He asked, do you have anything in writing where you refuse to co-sign for your sister? That's when I remembered the folder. I had an email from 3 years earlier when Melody asked me to co-sign that apartment lease. My reply, a very clear, no. I will not co-sign any loan for you. That email is gold, Marcus said. Forward it, and request every document with your name from the bank. Under federal law, they have to give them to you. He said something that stuck. Your signature is your word. When someone forges it, they're not just stealing money. They're stealing your identity. 2 weeks later, I went home for Thanksgiving. Not because I wanted turkey. Because my parents had made a huge financial decision with my name, and I needed to look them in the eye when I said no. The driveway was packed with cars. Inside, the table was set for 12. Mom, Dad, Melody, her husband, the kids, Aunt Patricia, uncles, cousins, even my grandfather at the end of the table. This wasn't Thanksgiving. This was an intervention. Melody crossed her arms. We all know why we're here. Dad gestured. Sit down, Sienna. We need to talk as a family. I stayed standing. This family needs you to step up, Aunt Patricia chimed in. You've always been the selfish one. This is your chance to prove us wrong. The pressure in that room was like a physical weight. I didn't sign anything, I said. You forged my signature. You said you would help, Melody fired back. At Christmas 2 years ago. You nodded. We all saw it. I said I'd think about it, I replied. Thinking isn't signing. A nod isn't a contract. In this family it is, my father snapped. Then this family has a very loose definition of consent, I said. He stood, chair scraping the floor. Then you leave us no choice. You have until December 15th. Either you agree to pay the mortgage, or we sue you for breach of verbal agreement. Melody will testify. I looked at my sister. You'd lie under oath? It's not lying if I remember it that way, she said, eyes shining with self-righteousness. My mother grabbed my hands, crying. We used our retirement for the down payment. If we lose this house, we lose everything. How can you do this to us? You committed fraud, I said. And you're asking what I am doing to you? I pulled free. Across the table, my grandfather, Harold, just watched.
No judgment.
Just something like
Pity.
When I finally walked out, Mom wailed. Aunt Patricia called me heartless. No one said, we're sorry. No one said, we went too far. Out in the cold, my grandfather followed me slowly, cane tapping on the concrete. Sienna, he puffed. Wait. I stopped. You shouldn't stay in there, he said. They're wrong. My throat tightened. Did you know about the mortgage? I asked. I found out after, he said quietly. Try to talk sense into your father. He wouldn't listen. He never does. He squeezed my arm. Check the notary date on those documents, he whispered. Something's not right.
He paused.
Your grandmother would be proud of you for standing up like this. She never could. I hugged him, then drove home in silence. That night, I opened my laptop and started digging. When the bank's envelope with the copies arrived, I sat at my kitchen table and just stared at it. The mortgage application was 12 pages long. My signature appeared on 3. Under a bright desk lamp, I compared them to my real signature. Mine has a backward curve on the S, a quick flick on the B, the kind of quirk you only notice when you've signed your name thousands of times. On the mortgage, the S curved forward. Slower. Rounder. Like someone copying from memory. Then I checked the notary date. September 15th, 2023. I opened my calendar. September 14th to 17th. AICPA National Conference, Seattle. Boarded a flight. Hotel receipt. An Instagram photo of me with 2 colleagues in front of the Space Needle, timestamped September 15th at 4:47 p.m. The document claimed I signed in person in Colorado that same day. They hadn't just forged my signature. They dragged a notary friend into it. I sent everything to Marcus. His reply took 3 minutes. This is exactly what I needed. We're not just defending anymore. We're going on offense. Fast forward a few weeks. A process server finds me at work. You've been served. Harold and Diane Brennan v. Sienna Brennan. Damages. $682,000 plus legal fees. They accuse me of breaking an oral contract and causing emotional distress to my parents. Melody was listed as their star witness. At the same time, Melody posted a long Facebook rant about some people caring more about money than family. Hundreds of reactions. Dozens of comments. They never mentioned forged signatures. Never mentioned identity theft. Just pray for my parents. They might lose their home. Marcus warned me. Do not respond online. Let them tell their story. We'll tell the truth in court. So I stayed silent and watched people who barely knew me decide I was a monster. March 3rd. Douglas County Courthouse. I wore the nicest charcoal gray suit I owned. If I was going to be the villain in my family story, I'd be the most professional villain that courtroom had ever seen. My parents sat at the plaintiff's table, Melody beside them, eyes already red. They didn't look at me once. Their lawyer, a polished man named Davidson, opened with, "This is a case about a daughter who broke her promise." He painted me as a cold, ambitious woman who abandoned her parents when they needed her most. He talked about a nod at Christmas dinner like it was a legally binding contract. Then he called Melody. She dabbed at her eyes, voice trembling on cue. We talked about the house, she said. Mom said she wanted to help. Sienna said she'd think about it, and she nodded. In our family, a nod means yes. She made it sound almost sacred. My father went next. He talked about changing my diapers, paying for my childhood, never imagining his daughter would do this to them. Not once did they mention the actual mortgage documents. Not once did they say my name had been added without my consent. They were hoping the judge would never look at the paper trail. They picked the wrong accountant. Then it was our turn. Marcus stood calmly. Your Honor, even if my client had nodded at dinner, a nod is not a contract, especially not for a $682,000 obligation. He walked to the evidence screen. But we don't actually need to argue about nods and feelings. We have something better. Documents. He entered the mortgage as Exhibit A, my flight and hotel records as Exhibit B, and asked me to approach. Ms. Brennan, is this your signature? He asked, pointing to the screen. No, I said clearly. It is not. He handed me a sheet of paper. Would you sign your name 3 times for the court? I did. Backward S. Quick flick on the B. The way I've always signed. He placed my fresh signatures beside the mortgage signature on the display. The difference was obvious. Even Aunt Patricia, in the gallery, leaned forward. The signature on the mortgage curves forward, Marcus said. Ms. Brennan's actual signature curves backward. She did not sign this document. Someone else did. The room went quiet. Then he pulled out the real bomb, Exhibit C. The email chain between Melody and the loan officer. He read it aloud. Is there any way to add my sister to the application without her being physically present? She's at a conference with bad Wi-Fi, but my dad can handle the paperwork on her behalf. The whispers in the gallery grew louder. Mrs. Brennan Cole, Marcus asked, turning to Melody. Did you write these emails? She froze. I thought it was fine, she said finally. Dad said he'd handle it. He said Sienna wouldn't even notice. My dad's head snapped toward her. Melody, he hissed. But it was too late. She'd said it. In front of the judge. In front of everyone. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, took off her glasses and looked at my parents calmly. This court does not exist to enforce family expectations, she said. It exists to enforce the law. She listed the evidence. A supposed verbal agreement versus travel records, signature discrepancies, and emails showing they actively tried to add me without my knowledge. Then she said the words I had been holding my breath for. I'm dismissing this case with prejudice. Her gavel cracked. With prejudice meant they couldn't just try again later. But she wasn't done. I am also referring the mortgage documents and related communications to the district attorney's office for review of potential fraud charges. My mother burst into real tears. My father went pale. Melody stared at the table like she could fall through it. In that moment, the narrative flipped. I wasn't the selfish daughter in front of a judge. They were the plaintiffs whose scheme had just blown up in their faces. My revenge wasn't shouting or gloating. It was standing there with my back straight while the law told my family, you were wrong. Marcus immediately moved on to our counterclaim. Identity fraud, forgery, and damage to my credit and professional reputation. The bank rep confirmed they'd be reviewing their processes and my name would be removed if fraud was confirmed. When the judge asked if I had anything to add, I just said, I never wanted this. I didn't ask to be on that mortgage. I didn't ask to be sued by my own parents. They chose this instead of apologizing. And I sat down. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is refusing to play the screaming villain they wrote for you and standing there as yourself instead. The fallout was ugly. The bank fired the loan officer for violating identity verification protocols. The notary, a friend of my dad's, lost his license. My name was removed from the mortgage and scrubbed from my credit report. My parents had to sell the house. Without my income propping up the loan, they couldn't afford it. The district attorney didn't press criminal charges. First offense, family matter. But my father and Melody got official civil penalties on their records. They also had to pay my legal fees. $23,000. It didn't make us even. It was never about money. It was about proving, in a place they couldn't manipulate, that I wasn't crazy, I wasn't lying, and I didn't deserve what they did. Their golden child's marriage cracked under the pressure. Melody's husband moved out. Last I heard, they were fighting over custody. My mother sent me one email. "You ruined us. Remember that?" I didn't respond. They ruined themselves. I just stopped letting them do it with my name. 6 months later, my life is quiet. I changed my last name to Burke, my mom's maiden name. It's kind of ironic, taking the name of the woman who hurt me most, but reclaiming it on my terms. I started therapy. My therapist told me something that hit like a punch. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you teach you to accept the unacceptable. Healing is unlearning that.
I'm unlernen.
I have my job. I got promoted. My boss said, "Most people would have crumbled under what you went through. You didn't. That matters." I have a small circle of friends who check on me without wanting anything. And on my bookshelf, there's a photo of me and my grandfather from his last Christmas. On the back, in shaky handwriting, he wrote, "The strongest people are the ones who can walk away." I used to think choosing myself made me selfish. Now I know it's the only reason I'm standing here with my life, my career, and my integrity intact. My dad once asked, "What do you even need that money for?" I have my answer now. For a life where no one can use me as collateral. For the freedom to say no without being put on trial. For mornings where the only person I have to answer to is me. If this story hit a nerve, if you've ever had to fight your own family just to keep basic boundaries, I see you. Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one, and you never know who might need to hear that they're not alone. If you enjoyed this little tour of poetic justice, tap that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next revenge story. And if you're still in the mood for family drama, check the description. I've linked another video about in-laws who tried to steal a woman's inheritance. Let's just say, it did not go how they planned. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, and don't let anyone use your love as leverage.